Howdy, everyone. I'm Carson,
Howdy, I'm Chaney.
and welcome back to Archery Academia. So, as we mentioned last week, we're going to be covering what archery is and go into some discussion on the different formats and everything.
It's gonna be great.
Archery Academia.
Okay, so let's talk some history first.
Oh no, that's my worst subject in high school.
That's okay. This is not that deep. So, I did some research. I actually did a lot of research for this episode. It's crazy.
It's fine. We get our toes wet into the world of archery.
Of course, of course. So, according to the World Archery website, and I'm going to link all the sources in the show notes, the earliest evidence of archery actually dates back to the late Paleolithic period.
Ooh, don't know what that is, but okay.
So, if you don't know what that means, it's about 10,000 years before the Common Era. So,
That's wild. That's old.
that is old. And apparently it was actually Egyptian first, which I didn't know that before I started researching it. And obviously it was used for hunting and warfare.
Now we do it for fun. We still do it for hunting, but mainly for fun.
Yeah, but I feel like the bow as a weapon has actually been taken out of circulation a little bit because of, guns and stuff.
The things that go pew pew are much stronger than the things that go boom.
What's is that the official sound of a bow?
Yeah, close enough. That's what my bow sounds like. Boom. That's not what my bow sounds like.
Hopefully not.
But but even though it got taken out of circulation for warfare, they still used it for fun, and the first official archery tournament, according to USA Archery, or World Archery, I should say, my bad. Can you say it, Carson? I don't wanna butcher the name.
Okay, so it was held in Finsbury, England in 1583 and had over 3,000 participants, which is crazy because I know most of the USATs have less than 1,000. So imagine a USAT if you're used to those, but 3 times that. That's insane.
Yeah, I the only tournament I can think of that would beat that is the Vegas shoot, and that's a lot of people. Like, I couldn't even imagine that back in 1583. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the equipment was a lot more primitive than it is now. There's some crazy things on bows now.
There's some wild
It's
stuff.
wild.
You could always go back to traditional, go back to some trad shooting, like back in what they probably used in 1583.
Maybe then I'd look a little bit more like Katniss.
Ooh, oh, I hate getting called that. I don't know if that's just an archery pet peeve of me, but like when I tell people that like, "Oh, I shoot archery for a living," or "I do it for collegiate," they're like, "Oh, are you like Robin Hood? You like Hawkeye?" I'm like, "No, wrong bow."
So, actually, me and someone else from the Texas A&M archery team, we're gonna make a whole bingo card with different things people ask when you tell them they shoot archery or you shoot archery.
I definitely gotta get that.
And yeah, it's obviously pop culture gets the word out and everything, and it's great. It's fun to see something I love reflected in the media, but it's just funny to see how people view archery.
It is hilarious. My favorite one is when someone asks if I'm like brave, and I'm like, "Totally. I talk to bears and I have red curly hair. Duh."
Of course, of course.
So yeah, I'm just like her and everything, you know? And I ride a horse.
The funny thing about Hawkeye though is a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, he's just a guy who can shoot straight." And yeah, it's impressive, but he should not be a superhero. No, that's hard.
Stuff is hard. You try going to shoot 30 perfect arrows and tell me what you can do, because I bet you can't. Well, there's some out there that can, but not everyone.
So actually in the current era, I believe Hawkeye actually has a compound bow, I
No.
think. In the MCU.
I feel like that's blasphemy. I don't think I would use that word right, but I feel like if he's gonna be this like, "Oh, shoots perfect and everything," he needs to have a trad bow or a bear bow.
Oh no, it's a recurve. I lied. I looked it up.
Okay, I was about to say that does like that would be cool, but like he would be shooting it like a bear bow, but with training wheels, as what people like to say for compounds, which is lame.
I know the arrow, though, shoots a compound. I do know that.
Okay.
So Arrow is the DC equivalent to Hawkeye, I guess, if you don't know your superheroes.
Nope, don't know, never heard that before, but okay.
It's also fun to see in pop culture because you look at their form and you're like, how are they doing that? That's
That's how you know you've been shooting a bow for a while, is when you see a video of someone shooting a bow in a movie, and you're telling them in your mind, like, "You're shooting that so wrong, how are you hitting the target?"
yeah. I just looked up a picture of Hawkeye and this guy is anchored at his chest.
Stop, hang on. Oh my gosh. You're joking. This is the oh, they have a woman. They have a woman with them?
Yeah, the new Hawkeye series. Yeah.
I didn't know she existed.
But I know that pop culture generally follows a more warfare centered shooting style. So something you would see if you were to actually go shoot a bow quickly and to get it to shoot as many arrows in a timely manner. So it's actually a slightly different shooting style and everything. You pull the bow back differently and everything. But it's still crazy to see that they actually kind of mix the two, honestly, and it doesn't work either way.
What? Explain yourself.
Okay, so there's a different shooting style that you see more with warfare that is focused on loading arrows and shooting them quicker.
Yes. Yes, because it doesn't really matter where you hit them as long as you hit them. That an arrow Fun fact, an arrow to the arm hurts a lot more than a gunshot to the arm. Like, that's it hurts. Well, it depends on the gun, but I'm not gonna get into that.
So they end up blending the two on accident because USA Archery slash competition form is very different than shooting form because you can take not as much time as you want, but you have a lot more time to get an arrow off. So the form's a little bit different. It's more
Uh-huh.
focused on accuracy than speed. So they end up blending the two because they're most used to the new competition form, but that's not exactly quick. So for action scenes and stuff like that, you want it to be super quick.
You're right. Okay, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So they're like blending two types of archery into one.
Yeah, it seems like that at least to me.
Okay. Well, at least people get to see a bow and be like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm gonna go do it," and then they get into archery. But if you met someone and they really wanted to get into archery and they asked you what bow type they would want to shoot, what would you tell them?
Okay, so I actually think that depends because the bow types are very different.
True.
And we're actually going to go into that a little bit more, but the price point on them is very different. So a compound is going to be honestly a target compound bow is about the same price as a recurve with all the limbs and stuff. But if you want to get into it quickly, you're going to want to go bare bow or fixed pin because that's a lot cheaper than going straight into compound with the stabilizers and the release and the
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I like the shop that I shoot at in my hometown. Shout out to On Target Archery in Canton, Texas, by the way. A lot of the guys that I talk to there, they're hunters. They go hunting in the like during hunting season. But then when hunting season's over, they don't want to get out of shape with their bow. So I tell them, I'm like, go fix pin. You don't have to worry about changing any of your pins. You don't have to worry about getting a whole bunch of new bars like stabilizers. Just go and shoot a 3D tournament. Go have fun. Go just go shoot for fun. And that's what most of them do. And I still see them all the time at 3D and outdoor tournaments because they didn't want to give up their strength from hunting season, so they shoot during the summer.
So now that we're talking about the different bow types, let's actually set the record straight. I know we talked a little bit about it last episode, but let's actually get into
Get in the weeds of what they are.
yeah.
Yes, yes, I agree.
So I actually looked up the World Archery rule book for each bow type to see what they define it as and what kind of rules are there. So for every single bow type, you're not allowed to have electronics, and your arrows for World Archery at least have to be, yeah, for World Archery events, they have to be 23s or smaller. So 23s are a certain diameter, I think.
Yes, size of the diameter from if you know anything about a circle, diameter is the full length of the circle, and the 23s is about that's a pretty good size arrow, I will say. And like they go all the way up to a 27. There's 26s, there's 25s, and there's 23s. And then they go all the way down to like nano size, which is like, I don't know, about the size of a pencil. Like they're tiny, they're thin, they're super tiny. Like the diameter is really small. So, but most people indoor season wise will shoot 23s.
Yes, but for indoors, a lot of people shoot 23s because of the rule in World Archery and most archery events where if you cut the line, you get the higher value. So when there's no wind or anything affecting it, you want to shoot those bigger arrows so that you can cut more lines.
Yup. They're line cutters for a reason.
So that's why they put a limit on it. So it's more even across the board where everyone's shooting kind of the same diameter arrow. They have the same restrictions, at least for World Archery.
Yeah, and like we'll talk about it later in the episode, but like in FAA, they shoot up to a size 27 diameter arrow, but like the formatting's a little bit different, the target's a little bit different, but we'll talk about that more later. But that's one difference with USA versus NFAA is you're allowed to have 27 size diameter arrows and you can have electronics. You can have a light on your bow. You can have I don't know what else you would have an electronic for besides the light, but that's just me. But that's like two major difference between the two. But right now we're just gonna stick with USA Archery because I feel like that one has good explanations on most of the bow types that we're gonna cover.
So the first bow type is the bow type that we both shoot, which is compound.
The best out there.
Which according to the rule book, chapter 11.2.1, so I did research, it may be a shoot-through type riser, which is drawn mechanically by a system of pulleys or cams, and it is braced using cables or a bowstring attached directly to the cams. So basically, what that means is it has a pulley system, which are called cams, that the strings wrap around and that helps you draw it back and everything.
It's literally a fancy pulley system.
Yeah. It's a stick with a fancy pulley system on the end.
Yeah, it is. It's really weird. And like, if you're really interested in seeing what a compound bow looks like, look up a compound bow and there'll be hundreds of different ones. And it's literally just a fancy stick with a pulley, two pulleys on it.
And for compound, there's no limit on stabilizer length, although rule book wise, there's no limit on stabilizer length, but you might get a couple weird looks if you're running a stabilizer as long as the field.
That would be, ooh, I don't even know how that would work.
I don't know either.
Or like a couple of the bigger pros that we know, they shoot weird looking stabilizers and there's no rule against that.
So Tim Gillingham actually is known for his weird stabilizers. So he actually did a seminar at Vegas like a year back or a couple years back.
I think it was last year.
I believe it was last year where he talked about actually why he does that. But it's so weird looking. It looks like a spaceship.
It does.
There's like two coming off the top, there's two coming off the back, there's two in the front. He has like 6 or 7 on there somehow.
So it's like it's really goofy. He shoots well. He won Vegas, I think, a year or two ago. But like the one on the back, that always confused me.
Yeah, and I know that Paige actually started, I don't know if mimicking is the right word, but she started doing something similar to that, and obviously she's such a good shooter.
A really good shooter.
I don't think it's quite as extreme, but she's started using a little bit more of a Tim Gillingham setup.
Oh yeah. And if it, like I said, if it works, it works. That's the beauty about compound is you can change any little thing, every tiniest thing, and it's still legal within the realm of compound.
For the most part, yeah. But for fixed pin, that's where it pins down a lot. So,
Oh yeah, that one is like it's our way or no way.
yeah, so fixed pin actually isn't a World Archery recognized bow type. It's specific for collegiate and under divisions and in NFAA.
Yeah.
So for fixed pin, your sight has to have zero magnification. Apparently, clarifiers and verifiers are allowed though, and there is no adjustment to equipment during the round. So,
Once that first scoring arrow's gone, wish you luck.
but in between matches, you are allowed to change it. Each match counts as a round, so you're allowed to change it between those. And then the front stabilizer, including weights, anything like that, may not exceed 12 inches from the riser.
Which is not a lot, mind you.
No, it is not.
Comparatively to, like, what compounds shoot, 12 inches is very small. That's about the size of, like, a back bar.
Yeah, so for reference, compound shoots somewhere around 30 inches on the front and then weights, and somewhere around 10 to 15 inches on the back plus weights. Where for fixed pin, you can only have 12 inches including your weights on the front. But there is no limitation on back stabilizer though, which is crazy to me. You could be running a full stabilizer on that back.
That's so wild. That would be kinda crazy to see. But you can only have one back stabilizer.
Yeah, you're allowed a single rear stabilizer.
In compound, you can either run one bar on the back or do like me and do double stabilizer in the back. And it's called a V bar because it looks like a V. To each their own. Again, going back to compound is do whatever works for you, and it works for me. It doesn't work for other people.
I do know that most commonly, though, compounds tend to run one stabilizer and recurves do tend to run those V bars. But obviously, it just depends on your shooting style.
I've always shot V bars my entire life, so I'm so used to them and always probably will be.
Yeah, I do know that that 12-inch front stabilizer, though, is a little bit of a challenge because one of our compound or our fixed pin guys was asking, like, oh, do you have any weights that I could try out? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how much you can have on your front, but you can try as many as you want. And he ended up liking it, and he had a little bit of extra room, but it wasn't like, I don't even think about that as a compound. I'm just like, oh, I'll just throw some weights on there. But in fixed pin,
Yeah, you gotta like watch.
yeah, in fixed pin, you actually have to watch it, especially with indoor nationals coming up because we're recording this the week before or
2 days before.
2 days before. Yeah.
But okay, now that we've done with the pulley systems and the training wheels, as these other two,
As recurve based shooters call us.
what exactly is a recurve then, Carson?
Okay, so according to the US or the World Archery Rulebook 11.1.1, it is an instrument consisting of a handle, riser, and grip. There is no shoot through types allowed, and two flexible limbs, each ending in a tip with a string knock.
Technical terms.
I am reading directly from the rulebook here. That basically means you're allowed to have a riser, which is like the main part of the bow, and two limbs with a string. And it is operated by being held in one hand and drawn with the other hand. So that's how most or all bows are done. But this one, you don't have a release aid like you do with compound.
Yeah. And if y'all want, let us know. But if you would like for us to get a recurver on to talk about why recurve, what do you think the differences are? Why do you think it's hard? And all this kind of stuff. Let us know who do you think we should try to get on. Because I feel like that would be great.
Yeah, we have so many great recurvers here. We have a couple of Olympic hopefuls. So actually, USA Archery put out something earlier today where 5 out of the 32 Olympic hopefuls are either currently going to A&M or have gone to A&M. So we can definitely try and get one of those people on. Everyone on here knows each other pretty well. Also have Venu, who barely missed Olympic trials, but he shoots so well. All of our recurvers do, honestly. It's so impressive.
It is really, really impressive.
Vanu already offered to be on, so we put out a little update that a new podcast is coming out, and he messaged me immediately like, I'm in.
Just let me know when.
Get me on it. So we'll definitely have him on at some point, and we can talk to different people on the team. So just let us know if you want to see anyone.
Yeah, definitely. We are open to whatever. If you come up with a cool episode idea, let us know. Maybe we'll add it to our little list.
Maybe we'll even have David on,
Oh, not David.
which is our famous bear bower, or at least famous amongst the team.
He won Vegas flights for Barebow this year. He's really good.
He did win barebow flights. So, a recurve can have stabilizers, an aperture, which is just a sight, but it's like smaller, and it can have a bunch of weights and stuff. But according to World Archery, a barebow is so, according to the rulebook 11.4.1, the bow described above shall be bare except for the arrow rest and free from protrusions, sight marks, blemishes, marks, or anything in the bow window area, which could be used for aiming. So basically, what that means is it's pretty much the recurve bow, but with nothing on it.
Yep, basically. It's really interesting. I love watching barebow. Barebow, in my own personal opinion, is it goes hard. It goes crazy. Like they go wild because they shoot so well for having nothing to aim with. So, well, okay, technically they do aim with something, but like, you know what I mean.
If you want to be impressed, go watch the Lancaster Classic barebow matches.
Oh my gosh, those are crazy.
These guys have nothing on their bow except for maybe a little bit of weight, and they have an arrow. They're shooting so well. I'm so impressed by barebows like on the daily.
Like, unironically, they shoot better than some compounds, some fixed pins, and even some recurve, like their scores wise. And it's just mind-boggling to me. They're shooting 3 spots, which we'll get into what that means, but like that is impressive. Super, super impressive.
Our boy David shot a 281 yesterday or the other day, which I don't know if you guys know what that means necessarily, but basically he dropped 19 points from clean as a barebow shooter.
Which is ridiculous. This man is amazing. Like there's no words to describe it. I'm ready to see what he does this weekend.
I'm so excited. It's definitely going to be a fun tournament to watch.
I really hope that he gets the collegiate record back, and I know he will.
So, talking about collegiate records, let's go ahead and shift a little bit into kind of the collegiate scene of archery.
What do you wanna know first? What do you wanna talk about first?
Okay, so how about we talk about what tournaments there are? So, what is this collegiate archery we keep talking about?
So, collegiate archery is obviously you have to be in college. The first year that you are allowed to shoot is obviously your first year as a full-time student, and you get 5 years after that first year has started.
And you have, I believe, 7 years to complete your eligibility.
Yes, 7 years. So, like, if you take a gap year, you're fine, like, you'll be chill. There was someone at Outdoor Collegiate Nationals, I think they were, like, 27 because they came to college late, but they're eligible to shoot technically. I think they're, like, 25, something like that. There is an age limit, but
Yes, I believe there is an age limit, but I don't know what that is.
yeah, it's not that important. Like, most of the kids that we shoot with are college age. The 3 main tournaments that when we talk about collegiate archery, the main one specifically is Outdoor Collegiate Tournament. That is our big one. That's where we get our points. That is where we get our awards. That's when our school gets recognized and everything. The one right before that, which is actually this weekend technically, it's combined with Indoor Nationals for USA, is Collegiate Indoor Archery, and that one takes our first 60 arrow score and rank us on the collegiate level, and then we get a recognition for that also. And those 2 scores, the indoor and the outdoor, the top 10 percentage-wise?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think it's the top 10% in each division get a recognition in form of All-American, which is basically you get certain benefits, you get a couple discounts and everything, just showing that we understand that you're a college student, but you're doing really well. So,
But there's one other one that I'm missing, and that is 3D Collegiate Archery. So that one is during October.
I believe it was like right after our fall break, which is in early October.
Yeah, because it was right after my birthday. It was right after my birthday, so it was October-ish, middle October and whatever, October. And that one specifically goes for all around All-American? Is that the word? What is it?
Shooter of the year.
Shooter of the year. So the reason why people will go shoot collegiate 3D is obviously they like 3D archery, which we'll explain what that is if you don't know. They'll go shoot that, and then they'll shoot indoor and outdoor. And if you are the number one percentage-wise shooter out of all 3 of those tournaments, you get Shooter of the Year.
Which is like all American, but it's just the top archer. So it's you get like a plaque.
Yeah, it's amazing. But collegiate is a lot of fun. It's definitely something nice. The collegiate 3D and the collegiate outdoor are its own separate tournaments. Like the only people that shoot that are collegiate archers.
Yeah, so indoor you just kind of have a your own division. So you'll shoot the collegiate division. But for 3D and outdoors, it's a whole separate tournament. So you're only there, there's only college kids there. There's only people that you're actively competing against there.
Yes, and all three of those tournaments are run the same as any of the other tournaments, like for USA, for 3D tournaments, pro-ams, whatever. And we'll touch more on what exactly each of those tournaments do and the formatting and all that kind of stuff. How many teams do you think we have on a collegiate level? Like, let's say that go to collegiate outdoors. How many teams do you think are colleges that are represented there?
I believe there is about 20 teams, I'd say. And obviously, each one has more or less people competing. So, for example, the Cumberlands and Texas A&M have a lot of people, and so does like Lindsey Wilson. But some colleges are smaller, obviously, and only have enough to fill the divisions, and some even don't have enough to do that. They pride themselves in the what they can win instead of being able to win the whole tournament.
But we will definitely discuss this in a lot more detail, a lot more in depth. Maybe we'll even get a coach on. What? Maybe, hypothetically. To talk more about this collegiate stuff. And also in that episode, we'll talk more about how we do archery and college because this is Archery Academia. We got to talk about school at some point, right?
Of course. And again, if you want to see like a coach on for that episode, definitely let us know on our Instagram at archery_academia, where we're obviously going to be running polls and stuff to get some more audience engagement. And let us know there if you want to see coaches or people.
Yes, definitely. Definitely let us know.
So now that we've talked a little bit about the collegiate side, let's just talk an overview of the different formats that we have.
The fun stuff.
It took us a little while to get there, but kind of what this episode is mainly about. So let's start with indoors because that's kind of what we're in right now at the time of this recording. Okay, so I know there are two main
Organizations.
indoors. There's USA and then there's NFAA, which there's a lot of difference between the targets and the rules and stuff. So I think I'll probably take the USA side. Well, Chaney can talk a little bit more about the NFAA side. So in USA Archery, you have a colored face and it rings 10 to 1, depending on the target, obviously. It goes yellow, red, blue, black, and then white. And then you get different values based on where you hit. So for compound, 10 is about the size of a quarter in the center of the target. And then it goes 9, 8, 7, so on. I know for NFA that's a little bit different. So why don't you describe that target?
Yeah. So NFA, what we like to call USA is called the rainbow target because it's multicolor, whatever. For NFA, it is blue and white. So the very center has a good size X ring. So like the very center is an X, and then it goes a 5, which is the rest of the white, and then the rest of the target is blue. But the scoring goes 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So obviously you want to try to hit the white, which you didn't touch on the formatting for USA, but for a singular game, is that what we're gonna call it? Or end? Whatever we want to call like 30 arrows.
That's a game.
Okay, so a 30-arrow game in USA Archery, that's like a competition.
Yeah, so you shoot 10 ends of 30 and then you do it again. So you actually shoot 20 ends of 3 arrows.
Yes. But for NFAA, you shoot 5 arrows at a time. So instead of 3 arrows, you shoot 5 and you shoot it for 12 ends. And the biggest kicker is NFAA switches at the halfway point. So for USA, you just stay like if you get put on target B, you stay there the whole tournament.
Yes. So if you're a vertical three spot, which is three spots in a row, you're in a line. But for if you're shooting a triangle three spot or a single spot, you're either high or you're low, depending on where you're put on the bail. And in USA Archery, you, like Cheney said, you stay there. You're either high for the whole tournament or you're low for the full whole tournament.
Yes, and for NFA, you switch. So you'll shoot, let's say you start on top, you start at the top of the target, you shoot 6 ends of 5 arrows, which is 30 arrows, and then you switch to the bottom. And so for a total tournament or a total game for NFA is 60 arrows. And there's either a single spot, which is the white with the blue rings that go all the way to one, or there's a 5 spot, which is literally 5 circles set up in like an X pattern, basically. And that only goes out to the 4 ring. So if you miss a 4, like you almost hit a 3, you got a 0. And that's the same with the 3 spot on the USA target. It's a little bit harder to describe it for USA, but that's what we have for NFA is a 5 spot, and you switch halfway. And I don't know which one I like better. I can't decide. I'm still pretty much torn on both of them.
So I believe the biggest reason that you switch at the halfway mark is because there are benefits to shooting the top and the bottom.
There's a lot of benefit shooting the bottom.
There's actually a couple more benefits I feel for switching in NFAA. So in USA Archery, you every end you switch who is shooting first. So if the top shoots first this time, next time the bottom will shoot first. So you'll do top, then bottom, then top, and then you'll do it all again throughout the full tournament. Whereas in NFAA, I know that you start, if you are on the bottom, you are shooting first. Every single end.
Yep, regardless if you switch to the bottom, now you're up first.
Exactly. You don't switch every time. Some people like shooting first, some people like watching their competition first, but I feel like there's benefits to changing NFAA because of that format.
The only thing that I will say that these two have in common is the environment of where you shoot these. So these are both indoor tournament. You shoot 20 yards, which is 18 meters.
Yes.
You shoot that in a, hopefully, fingers crossed, a very lit range, like a very nice illuminated range, and everyone that you're shooting against has that same advantage. They all have the great lighting. They all shoot at the same distance. There's no wind. Your feet are planted perfectly because it's most likely concrete. So like the environment and the pressure to shoot, I say perfect with quotations, but good enough, skyrockets through the ceiling because everyone's on the same playing field and everyone gets the same treatment. It depends on how you handle that pressure and how well you perform. And that is why I love indoor archery.
So I think that makes it a lot more difficult mentally because at least with compound, I can't really touch on recurve or bare bow or anything like that. But with the compound side, pretty much for certain events, if you drop a certain shot, you're out of the game. That's not necessarily good to think like that because anyone can drop a shot. So it's definitely more difficult mentally to stay in that game because with outdoors, if you drop an arrow, at least for me, it's like, okay, everyone's going to drop an arrow. Nobody's going to shoot clean this game for the most part. And if they do, more power to them.
Yeah, pat on the back.
But in indoor, it's more, they're going to shoot clean. Every point I drop is a problem. But that's really not how you should think about it, obviously.
Oh, definitely do not think about it like that.
That's kind of the rut that a lot of people get into. I've definitely started switching away from that mentally, but obviously on those difficult days, it's a little bit, oh my God, I've dropped so many points. It's definitely, I feel mentally more challenging indoors.
Which now that you brought up the mental game, let's talk about a big tournament, the biggest one for indoor season that comes around every year that stumps a ton of good shooters, which is called the Vegas Shoot. It takes USA Archery and NFAA and it makes this big old tournament. Carson, you want to tell them how many shooters we had this year at the Vegas Shoot?
I believe we had 4,200.
It got up to 45.
It is a massive shoot, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more in another episode. A lot of it more in another episode. I think we're going to I think we're gonna dedicate a full episode to that actually.
It's the best tournament. I love Vegas. I love it so much. I am just so ready to go back next year, and we'll talk about more later on where it got moved to.
Oh yeah. That's definitely caused some discourse.
But like we said, we'll talk about it later. But now, let's get into what Miss Carson Cray really likes to do.
Oh, I'm not that big of a fan of indoors, but outdoors is where I found my love for archery.
Let me rant on this girl a little bit. She shines for outdoor. So me and her teammates, obviously, she introduced me to the world of outdoors. It's great, like it's wonderful. I like it. I'm good at it, whatever. But shooting with her at the archery range, like here on campus, I'm like, oh, I just want to be up with her. I just want to shoot scores like her. Which what's like your average, like 690?
My average is about a 690, yeah.
So 690, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, I wanna get like a 680, 685." I go to collegiate archery outdoor nationals, which I've never been to an outdoor tournament before, and I'm looking at all these people and I'm like, Carson's good. Like, she's really, really good. And that was the first time when I realized, oh, Carson means and does what she says. This woman plays first for collegiate outdoor. She is on the, I don't want to butcher it, the the travel team for USA Archery Outdoors. She's about to go to all these different places for shooting a bow outside. And I'm over here like, oh, I just want to be up with her. She is like third or fourth in the country right now.
I am technically fifth, but because of personal reasons, two of them they're not traveling this year. So I have the privilege of actually being on the travel team this year.
She's really freaking good. That is all I have to say. So you know what? I'm gonna take a back seat and let her talk to you about the tournament, about the formatting, about what it means to be on the travel team, and the whole shebang. And maybe I'll come in a little bit from here now to be like, she's really good.
Okay, so for outdoors, obviously it's going to be in an outdoor setting. So, how much can go wrong in 20 yards in terms of wind and stuff? You might be thinking that, but it's actually a lot more difficult because you move back so much. So, for outdoors, compound wise, you move to 50 meters, which is 55 yards, and you shoot at a target that is about double the size of the one you shoot indoors. Now, that doesn't seem like that difficult, but you have to remember you're shooting at close to triple the distance at a target face that's only double the size. So I believe to your eye, it looks about the same.
I do concur, it does.
So to your eye, it looks about the same, and that's why they choose that target face. And on the recurve side, they push it back to 70 meters, which is about 78 yards, which is almost 4 times the distance that we shoot indoors. But they're on a even bigger target face, and I believe optically it is about the same as the other two as well. I can't speak on that personally because I don't shoot recurve, but I do know that they try and do the targets like that, so you're looking at the same thing. The scoring is a little bit different from indoors. So normally in outdoors, you shoot on a single target face because there's not really a reason to shoot on a 3-spot. Because of the distance, you shoot smaller arrows, which you get knocks that are meant to break. So in indoors, you don't want to shoot on that small target face with all 3 arrows because you don't want to break arrows like that. But for outdoors, you want to break arrows. Or I guess you don't really want to break arrows because that's expensive.
No, you wanna break arrows, because if you break a Nox in the middle of that X, you're killer.
It's that weird middle ground where when an arrow hits, you're like, "Yay, that's a good sound." And then you're like, "Wait, that's an expensive sound."
That is very true.
But that's also why we shoot something called pin knocks, which is basically a pin with the knock on it. And those are a lot easier to replace than the full arrow. So you're only replacing the knocks rather than the $60 arrow. Like, it's a little bit cheaper. Compound actually does get a full 10 ring and an X ring. So ties are broken by 10s and then X's outdoors. but it's more or less the same target that you shoot indoors. It's just a bigger size. But my favorite part of outdoors is the different events that come with it. So in indoors, you shoot 60 arrows and that's the tournament. But in outdoors, it gets a little bit crazier.
And go in order, like the first day of competition at an outdoor tournament. Start from there.
Okay, so the first day of competition at a tournament, let's say you show up at
Gator Cup.
at Gator Cup.
Which how many are there again?
Yes, there are 5 events, and to make the senior USAT team, you need to attend 4 of them.
And each event, where are they located, starting with the first one?
Okay, so the first one is in Arizona. It is called the Arizona Cup. The second one is the Gator Cup in Florida. The third one is SoCal in Southern California. And then there is Buckeye in Ohio. And then there is Target Nationals, which travels around each year. And this year it's actually going to be in Lubbock, Texas.
My home state. Great old Texas.
The great old state of Texas.
Which you might see me and Carson there, and maybe we'll interview some people. We'll just see what we're feeling that day, you know?
Of course. Last year and the year before, it was in Pennsylvania. The year before that, it was in Virginia, I think. But it moves around on I think, bi-yearly basis is usually how it moves around.
Now, let's pick the first one of the season, Arizona Cup. Starting with the first day of competition, how does it work?
Okay, so first day of competition, you're going to have your qualification day, which is where you shoot 12 ends of 6 arrows, so 72 arrows total, and that is based on total score for all divisions, and it ranks you. The reason it ranks you is for the next day of competition, which is usually elimination day. So eliminations start out, you're paired up with, depending on your rank. So the first place person is paired up with the 64th person, or whatever they cut to. And then the second is paired with 63rd, and so on until it meets in the middle. And it kind of crunches down. And then whoever wins moves on to the next match, and the next match, and so on. So for that, you shoot 5 ends of 3 arrows, which an end is kind of just what we call a set of where we shoot arrows from when we go score them.
Yes, which it's 6 arrows, correct?
6 arrows for outdoors, yes, but for eliminations, it's only 3.
It's only 3, yep. And total score for a single elim round is 150.
Yes, but not all divisions do total score for elimination. So for compound and fixed pin, they do total score, but for recurve and barebow, they do something called set points, which we'll go a little bit more in depth about that. But long story short, you get a certain number of points for if you win the set, tie the set, or lose the set. And it's first to a certain amount of points.
Yeah, it's pretty easy once you explain it, but it can be a little confusing at the start.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we have an episode on competitions, eliminations, all that. As for the next couple of days of tournaments, you might have something. There are 2 different types of team events. While archery is a very individual sport, there are certain events that combine other people from your country, from your school, whatever tournament you're at. So there's something called mixed teams, which you take the top compound male from your country, school, whatever, and the top compound female, or recurve or barebow or whatever. You pair them together and they shoot mixed teams, which is kind of crazy. It's a lot faster paced and it's a lot more.
It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a lot of fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun to compete in. And there's also something called official teams, which is the top 3 from each division, compound men, compound women, recurve, whatever. And they shoot teams. So again, we'll go a little bit more about how those are run specifically in an episode talking about those. But those events are just so fun.
Yes, they are. And isn't there something that you do? Again, I'm not an outdoor shooter, but isn't there something that y'all do called round robins?
So for trial processes, there's something called round robins, which depending on what it's for, you shoot against everyone else you're going against, either the top 8 or the top 16, and you shoot against every single other person. Usually this isn't during competition, but it is used as a trial procedure.
Okay, okay. So, to switch the subject just a little bit to something that I enjoy shooting outside is something called 3D archery. So, 3D archery is those little foam animals that you see, and those things are a lot of fun to shoot. Carson, what is your opinion on 3D archery?
A lot of people are going to be upset about this, but I actually do not enjoy 3D archery that much. The first couple of experience I had with it weren't that fun because it was a lot of waiting around and not a lot of shooting. And since I enjoy outdoors the most, that's quite a few arrows in quite a short amount of time. But with 3D, I know it's a lot more waiting. It's a little bit different of a game, and I just don't quite enjoy that as much.
Yeah, Carson is completely right. That is the only negative thing I have for 3D. I'm gonna talk more on the national side of things, but like each state has a different set of rules and whatever. But like nationally wise, for the pro-ams, which there are 6 pro-ams, they shoot 20 targets for 2 days, if I'm remembering right. Yeah, for 2 days. And to shoot 20 targets could take a group of 40 people and 40, like 4 people per target, 40 people in total on 20 targets, 3 to 4 hours, which is way too long just to shoot 20 arrows. Like when we put it like that, that is a lot. Like that is way too much time doing nothing.
As someone who loves shooting my bow, I would much rather be in an environment where I'm shooting 72 hours in 4 hours rather than 20 arrows in 4 hours. But that's just my personal preference. Obviously, 3D shooters have their own merit, and uh, they're very honestly, it's impressive. But that's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, so 3D archery is kind of like its own like I don't want to say like it's the outlier child, but it's basically the outlier child. Everyone knows it. Everyone like maybe shoots it once or twice, but there's only a few. Let me rephrase that. There's some archers like pros that all they do is 3D. They don't do outdoor, they don't do field, they don't do indoor. They focus on 3D. And you know what? I don't blame them because yeah, you might win a ton of money shooting the Vegas shoot, but every 3D tournament you go to, and if you place at least top 5 or top 3, you're making some sort of money from sponsors, from the tournament. So a lot of people that I know that shoot 3D, they do it for the money. And it's something different to look at. There's so many different types of targets that they can use. There's 30 different animals that they could put out there. They can throw a black hog in a dark corner at 40 yards. And you got to hit the 10. Actually, you got to hit the 12 depending on what class you shoot. But I don't know if you understood what I just said, so I'm going to explain it.
I was about to say, since you mentioned a 10 and a 12, let's talk a little bit about how these are actually scored. Because it's quite different from indoor and outdoor archery.
We don't really have a way to like show you a target face, but all I say target face, an animal vitals, all you really got to know is the highest score during a pro-am that you can hit is a 12. And there's 2 spots that you can hit a 12. You can either hit the lower 12, which is at the bottom of the 10 ring, or you can hit the upper 12, which is at the top of the 10 ring. The kicker is every target that you walk up on, the bottom 12 is always in play. You can only go for the upper 12 if you call it. So if you get up on the line and you got a pretty little arrow down there from one of your target mates that's like dead center X and someone's already in the bottom, not X, dead center 10 and someone's in the bottom of the 12, just aim for the upper 12. Be confident and hit it. Outside of that 10 ring though, which I want to say the 10 ring's pretty big.
It's a pretty it's a big size compared to the 10 ring and indoor or outdoor, honestly.
Yes, and the size of that 10 ring and 12 rings differ on everything. Like,
Yeah.
the 12 and 10 ring on the buck, like the big old deer, is not gonna be the same on, like, the turkey. Like, they're gonna be different. They're gonna be different. But outside of the 10 ring, it goes to 8. And this 8 ring is that one's pretty big too. It's almost the entire size of the vital. It's the main part of where it is. And then outside of that, which is the outskirts of the vital, um like the no, actually, excuse me. The 8 is the rest of the vital, and then the entire rest of the body is a 5.
So I know that if you hit anywhere on that animal, you get a 5. Whereas in outdoor or indoor archery, if you hit the paper, you're not guaranteed points. Like you could hit a part that's not scoring.
Yeah, so it helps a lot whenever, like, you forget to set your sight and maybe you hit, like, a gut shot or something, you're still gonna get at least 5 points. You might be out of the running for first, but you're still gonna get 5 points. If Carson wants to introduce the very last topic for this episode.
So one of my favorite, more fun kind of events in archery or competition styles is field archery because it's as if 3D archery and like world archery, so indoor slash outdoor, had a child. So it's the same thing as 3D where you're going through the woods, you're shooting at different targets at different distances. But in field, you shoot 3 arrows per target and you shoot them at actual target faces. So the target faces are in the innermost circle, it's a 6, and then it goes out from there. But it's a yellow and blue target face. Depending on the distance you're at, it actually changes. So if you're really up close, you'll have something called a bunny target, which is a smaller target face, but you're 5 meters away. Or I think it goes up to like 10 meters. And each target face has a different distance range that it can be at. That just I feel like it blends 3D and indoor slash outdoor pretty well.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoyed shooting field, growing up because it got me used to shooting at different angles and in the sun and uneven ground, but also gave me a chance to focus on holding on a target at a far distance and worrying about making every shot count because you walk and shoot a ton of arrows in field archery. But with touching on on the 4 main types of archery, Carson, take those 4 and rank them. Your best one to your least one.
Okay, so personally, based on how my enjoyment level of them, I feel like outdoor is my most enjoyment. I love outdoor so much. I love the people that are there. I love the format. I love the challenges with the wind and stuff. My second most favorite is field because I think it's a fun step away from the same targets as outdoor. Even though I love them so much, sometimes you just need a little bit of a break. Field is definitely that break for me when I do shoot it. And it's a little bit more of a niche tournament. I feel we don't have as many of those here in the US. And I think that's really fun. Indoors, it's still fun, but it's definitely a little bit, I would much rather be outdoors because I like the sunshine, and indoors does mimic that feel a little bit more where you're shooting quite a few arrows in the time frame and you still have all the people and everything. Whereas 3D, it is my least favorite, but that's just because of my method of shooting and what I like in tournaments, which is the challenge. I like the people. I like shooting a lot of arrows. So 3D is definitely the lowest, but like I said in the first episode, I really can't hate anything archery. So
And I definitely agree with you there.
yeah, I definitely don't despise 3D, but if I had my choice between any tournament, it would definitely be an outdoor tournament. So, what about your ranking?
So, number 1 is definitely indoor. I like the mental challenge. I like the consistency. I'm very wussy because I don't like wind and I don't really like the sunshine when I shoot. I like everything to be perfect. But indoor is definitely my number 1. My second one, ooh, probably gonna be field just because I can't like, every single field tournament I have ever shot, I have enjoyed 100% of the time. There's only one time I didn't enjoy it, and that was because I was stuck with someone that was really slow, and I was just like, "Get me done. I wanna go home in the middle of the Texas heat. I just wanna leave." That's definitely number 2. Number 3, if you would've asked me about a year ago or 2 years ago, I probably would say 3D, but honestly, outdoor archery is a lot of fun. I like the different aspects of the shooting, the eliminations, the mixed team, the team, even qualifications a lot of fun, so that's definitely my 3rd, and even though 3D is at number 4, I still heavily enjoy shooting 3D. It's a good mental challenge to figure out where I need to shoot the animal, aiming off of different arrows, and just having fun. Like, yeah, I only shoot 20 arrows, or technically in Texas, we shoot 30 arrows at a time, but 20 arrows, just chit-chatting with all the people, I love it, and I have a ton of fun doing it. So that's definitely my ranking.
Yeah, so I think your spread is a little bit closer than mine because I definitely there's a little bit more spread in my enjoyment from my top to my bottom, but it seems like you kind of yours is a little bit more tighter.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't hate any of these. Like, if I had to choose one that I didn't like shooting at all, it would probably be 3D just because it's such a different ball game that like it's a little bit harder to get ready for, but I really do enjoy shooting 3D. So, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
And with that, the end of episode 2 comes to a close. This was a great episode. I loved it.
So we'll see you all in the next one.
Bye, guys.
And until then, bye.
Bye.